Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that Thursday night masterclass. Here to break down some of the RB utilization takeaways and a ton of injury information that we do need to be on top of ahead of week 7. So I am your host, Ian Hartitz, and joining me as always, the one, the only, Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Dwain, had your wedding hat on last night. How was it?
It's always great to go to a wedding and see young people starting off their lives. You know, got to do that with you and Julia. That was pretty cool. You guys are all so happy. Everything's great. Just kidding. Like I'm very thankful for my wife and my marriage, but it was really cool. Got to meet a lot of other cool people, like from his side of the family I had never met, man. And these people, like an uncle is a director, lives in LA, has directed all these vampire movies. That was cool. Another guy in this band called Drab Majesty, which is really good. It's like an 80s kind of homage thing to like Depeche Mode, New Order. So yeah, I got to meet a lot of new cool people, and obviously a big night for my wife's little sister. So it was a lot of fun. And I'm gonna be honest, watched my son drink a few drinks, so got to see how he stood up. I was driving, so he didn't have to worry about it, and he made it home. He didn't need to throw up or anything, so I thought he did a good job.
Wow, I would say taking after his old man, but maybe he's even doing a little bit better there. So, guys, again, eventful night in the McFarland household, and honestly, just an incredible night of sports as well. Like, you talk about incredible moments and just great back and forth games, and that's exactly what we had. How about those Cleveland Guardians? Down go the Yankees. Great day to be an Ohioan. But yeah, Dwayne, we also had some Thursday night football. Broncos took down the Saints 33-10. Kudos to anyone that was able to start that Denver DST. Got your touchdown later in the game after you unfortunately had to go through a sheesh earlier on after Spencer Rattler did some, rookie quarterback hijinks. But Dwayne, yes, I get it. Was not the most exciting game, but I always maintain bad Thursday night football better than no Thursday night football. So we're going to keep those complaints to ourselves, even if, not too much passing production going on. Neither Bo Nix nor Spencer Rattler managed to reach even 175 yards through the air. No individual receiver had even 60 yards. So really was more so, Dwayne, a conversation here about the running backs, one of whom was actually pretty freaking good. Javonte Williams, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 88 yards rushing, also chipped in 23 receiving yards. Someone I know you were noting earlier this week, Dwayne, did have great utilization. We were just waiting for that production to come around.
Yeah, this was a player that was definitely due for regression. Now, when we say due for regression, we don't always know that it's going to come the very next game, right? It might be another game after that. But yeah, Javonte's really settled into a nice role here. And this has really been since the Tyler Beatty injury. They don't use Audric Estime quite as much as what they were using Beatty. So Estime returned to the lineup obviously last weekend, and then we saw what he did last night. He looked pretty good too. But whenever we talk about Javonte Williams getting 51% of the rushing attempts over the last 4 games, not ideal. But you know how it goes, Ian, in a Sean Payton backfield. You're getting half, and then the rest is going to be split between 2 other guys. That's pretty much just the way he works a backfield. So we do have Javonte Williams in the lead role here. Route participation is the other key thing, right around 50% over the last 4 games now. So not a great offense, not like a team we're super excited about, but the Denver Broncos, they have a good defense. So when they can keep you in games and they can keep feeding these running backs, and you now have a 14% target share on the year, targets per route run 22%. So that all puts Javonte Williams at a 7.7 utilization score over the last 4 games. You know what that is? That's a running back 2, guys. Looking over the last 4 years, it's a running back 2. Now, things could change. Like, some of those carries could shift to one of these other guys. Sean Payton will do some weird stuff. But for the last 4 weeks, it's pretty much been Javonte. So you want to call him a low-end running back 2 because you don't like the offense. I'm cool with that. I think that's about where I'm going to have him. That's where I had him ranked this week. It's probably where I'll continue to have him ranked moving forward. But it is a reminder that he can come through and give you these sort of games. One other quick note, I would say, Ian, I know we'll talk about Kamara here in a second, but on the Broncos side of the football, if you are playing in a sicko league, just keep an eye on Troy Franklin. The last 2 games, 68%, 67% route participation. Remember, this guy played with Bo Nix in college. He could have that natural connection. Last night had a 26% target share to lead the Broncos. So he scored 11.6 and 10 fantasy points over the last 2 games. So you're playing in one of those deeper leagues, 14-teamer. You guys are starting 3 receivers and 2 flexes. Like, Troy Franklin should probably be on your bench. If there's anybody on this team that I would say, okay, maybe over the second half of the season, he and Bo Nix can create a little magic. Maybe they get in that wide receiver 3 conversation. It would be Troy Franklin, the former Oregon Duck.
Yeah, the other former Oregon Duck, Bo Nix, again, maybe not the biggest day passing, but Dwain, he can scoot out there, 75 rushing yards, now has 255 through his first 7 games. Fellow Auburn legend Cam Newton only had 266. So not saying Bo Nix and Cam Newton are the same person, Dwain, but, yeah, they're not, but you guys could imagine.
14% design rush rate, man. That's pretty big. And a 10% scramble rate. I'm with you. I get it. Like Bo Nix, he's really like as excited as we got about with Drake May, who does have a bigger arm and I think can make the bigger plays. They're not as far. I love it whenever you ask me and you'll be like, what's the difference, Dwayne, between Drake May and Bo Nix? Not a lot. I mean, I think there's more big play upside with May because of his arm, but Bo Nix is pretty close, man, on all the rushing stuff.
And it is one of these things where, guys, I saw some of those misses Bo Nix had last night. They were horrendous. You could probably put 4 or 5 of them together. The one specifically where there were 2 wide open receivers and he managed to put the ball seemingly right in between them. That was brutal. He does seem to be making the right reads most of the time. And like we've seen the arm, he can make those throws. He just really hasn't. So, hey, it would make sense. Again, if he does get some more starts under his belt, he gets going. I know we're talking about a 24-year-old quarterback here, not a 21-year-old like Drake May. So it's a bit tougher to wrap your mind around the improvement. But at the end of the day, man, I know heavily aided by the defense. But Broncos have won 4 of 5 with Bo Nix under center. Sean Payton and company doing some good things. And they're going to have a chance to keep that train rolling next week, Dwayne, against the Carolina Panthers. So even if it is just Devontae Williams in Fantasyland, good stuff going on with the Broncos. Not so much with this injury-riddled Saints team, though, Dwayne. I mean, they were talking about on the broadcast all the offensive linemen that were out, in addition, obviously, to Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. So we thought we still had at least one good thing here in the form of Alvin Kamara in our fantasy lineups, but apparently not even he could overcome this dire situation, Dwayne. 7 carries, 10 scoreless rushing yards, caught 6 passes, good for PPR leagues, but again, just 14 scoreless receiving yards as well. So is this a point, Dwayne, where we have to look at this offense and just say the floor is so low that even Alvin Kamara needs to be downgraded?
Well, I think you have to take it week by week. I think it really depends on as their offense gets healthier, we'll need to respond back the opposite way, which I saw most of our rankers do this week. I think everybody kind of acknowledged, this guy's getting more touches than any other running back. So it's hard to have him outside of your top 12 runners. But at the same time, you can't have him way up at number 1 or 2 just on that volume, knowing that we've got all these offensive line injuries. We know we're probably going to be missing the top 2 receivers. We knew that earlier in the week. Obviously, that came to fruition. And no Derek Carr. So not really that surprising. But if you had Alvin Kamara, it's not like you could really bench him, Ian, unless you were just super loaded at the position, because it's just hard to turn down all the volume. So I think actually right now might be an opportunity to buy low on Alvin Kamara because the offensive line injuries, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the center will be back soon. It wasn't a season-ending injury. I don't believe the other one was a season-ending injury either. We could have Derek Carr. He's now moved in from the week-to-week range to day-to-day, I think is what we heard, from the coaching staff last night. Yeah, exactly. So may have Derek Carr back under center next week. Not that that's great, but it could be a stabilizing factor. You'll get Chris Olave back. You're missing Shaheed, but maybe one of the other young wide receivers, can step up. So I think it might be actually an opportunity to buy a little bit low on Alvin Kamara if someone doesn't like this dud in the buy. It's not a complete dud, but a bad fantasy score at 8.4 points.
He is getting fed more than ever, Dwayne. Career high 145 touches through now 7 weeks of action. Puts him on pace for 352 across 17 games. Previous career high was just 287 back in 2021. So I get it. Rough evening for the Saints. They were trying to retire or put in Drew Brees in their Hall of Fame or something. I wasn't watching the halftime show. Give me a freaking break there, people. But, maybe could have some better days ahead, specifically once that O-line does get healthier. So, guys, that was your Thursday night roundup. Now we have plenty of injuries to get to, but first, a quick word to our friends over at New Era. Got to get the Broncos fit on, Dwayne. Rewarding some of the winners. And also, my wiener dog Lily picked the Broncos to win. So we are all on the same page right there. But yeah, guys, join the fight against cancer with New Era Cap, the official cap of the NFL. Each cap from the Crucial Catch collection not only represents your favorite team in bold colors, but also promotes the prevention and early detection of cancer. Wear your colors proudly and help us tackle cancer head on with the official cap of Crucial Catch. Charitable contributions are awarded by the NFL Foundation to the American Cancer Society. Quarterback injuries, Dwain, not great, but we maybe, just maybe, have some good news out of Indy. You know, take it with a grain of salt, if you will, but it seems like Anthony Richardson is pacing to be back this Sunday with that oblique injury. He has managed to practice in full in each of the past 2 days. So really with Richardson, Dwain, it continues to be a small sample. We've seen in his career the highs, finds the end zone as a rusher, hits a couple of those deep downfield shots, and the low when it looks like the ball is not even landing in the same zip code as his intended wide receivers. So looking at Richardson this week and moving forward, can we get back to that, just rushing induced QB1 level production, you think? Or is this going to be a situation that sadly we just need to lower our expectations for moving forward?
I think there's an opportunity for major boom games at any point. And again, Anthony Richardson's going to run the ball enough that he's going to be in that category of it's almost impossible to not be a top 10 quarterback in fantasy points per game, right? He might not get there this year on total points due to missing games already. My challenge with him is, Ian, is there's just enough risk with a re-injury, with the way he plays and with the injury that he has, and the fact that last week it sounds like he could have played and they decided to go with Joe Flacco. And so it worries me. Like, do they have an out now to pull this guy off the field and get Joe Flacco out there? So that really keeps me from pushing him inside the top 10, because honestly, if we knew he was going to play the whole game, that's where he would belong. He would belong in the top 10 quarterback range. That's where he would be. But right now, I've got him as QB 14 on the week. I'm a little bit below you. I think you're at 12. Waz is at 12. Yep. Friedman's at 16. Charch is way lower than all of us because Charch has a guillotine mindset, guys. He does not want to be chopped. He's not putting Anthony Richardson anywhere in their lineup. So that's QB 24 for him. But I think there's a reason like that you could be a little bit more pessimistic and say, let's see it. Let's see a whole game of him actually being healthy, and they don't pull him at some point for Flacco.
Home against the Dolphins should be a winnable enough matchup. Certainly now has his wide receivers healthy, so that is good. We do, in fact, have Richardson ranked ahead of guys like Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, Drake May, Matthew Stafford, amongst others. I have him ahead of guys like Jared Goff and also even, Brock Purdy. Yeah, might need to fix that one.
Yeah,
but
see,
at least the Jared Goff one.
I'm playing Goff and I'm playing Purdy over him this weekend. Just because I don't want to take a 5-pointer. That's my biggest thing. Like with Richardson, I think there's enough risk of that to say Lions, Vikings, that could be a shootout. And we saw last week Goff throw a lot of touchdowns against the Cowboys, even though they could have just ran all those in against Dallas's defense. So I slightly lean Goff, but I think you're in the right range. I have him one spot ahead of Mahomes. I wouldn't blame anyone for playing Mahomes over him. I've got him one spot above Kirk Cousins. I think that's also a near coin flip. But I'm playing Jared Goff, Kyler, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, all those guys for sure over him, and Geno, because the Falcons throw the. I mean, not the Falcons, the Seahawks throw the ball so much.
That's about the range for sure. So again, hopefully we get the full kind of game's worth of good health, because to your point, Dwain, really has been disappointing to see him not take a bit better care of his body as he is, running downfield trying to truck linebackers. So please, Richardson, stay safe, for my best ball bankroll's sake. All right, guys, 2 quarterbacks who are practicing in full and presumably thus good to play. Jets QB Aaron Rodgers did miss the first practice of the week with an ankle, but he's got Devontae Adams in town. He's going to be ready for Sunday Night Football, and he accordingly practiced in full on Thursday. Also, Patriots quarterback Drake May had that concerning MRI storyline pop up after Wednesday's practice, but ultimately he's practicing full all week with that knee injury and should be good to go for that London-themed matchup against the Jaguars. So 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Cannot wait for, maybe we could wait, but hey, going to be an exciting morning of Sunday football either way. So guys, got some running back news to go through, but first a quick word to our friends over at Knockaround. Get my Denver Broncos shades on. Dwain, my neighbor's got to be so freaking confused how I'm rocking all these different teams every day, but it's always a great day to be great here at the Hartitz household. And honestly, man, these knockaround glasses are so freaking cool. I didn't, we've talked about, and Dwain always use knockaround, but the fact that frames are as just sturdy as they are for being affordable, I am a big, big fan, because, if you do, go ahead and head to knockaround.com and pick up your new go-to pair of polarized shades for less than $50. You'll find 25 frame styles, over 25, I should say, and dozens of colors. You are guaranteed to find sunglasses that look good and protect your eyes with full UV 400 protection. And be sure to check out Knockaround's officially licensed NFL collection that I am rocking right now, so you can rep your team all week and hopefully all the way through the playoffs. Visit knockaround.com and use code LIFE for free shipping on your order. Love me some knockarounds, but don't love me some RB injuries, Dwain. And oh my gosh, do we have plenty to get to here. So let's start things off with Jaguars RB1, allegedly week to week, but I don't know because he's been practicing in a limited fashion all week. Travis Etienne with his hamstring injury. I mean, if he somehow is active, Dwain, I'm going to be really scared about going anywhere near him in fantasy. But I think the bigger ramification here is what Etienne being active could do to Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, so number one, like you missed like such a great way to transition. If there's if there's a knock around position, it's the running backs. Ian, come on, they get knocked around. They're hurt. You got to be a dad though. Like if you were to say that joke, I would ask you if Julie is pregnant. And you don't know. So yeah, looking at ETN, I think to your point, it's pretty easy. Whenever we look at the rushing attempts over the last several games, like he's already really given away the lead role to Tank Bigsby. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's getting the passing down work, and that's what Dearness Johnson took last week. So ETN, even if he's active, he's really just a borderline running back 2 these days, Ian. I mean, you're hoping maybe he could get back more of a workload, former first-round pick. So, it's not like a guy you're just dumping, but you'd rather not have him in your fantasy lineup, to be honest. And I'm probably being generous. I'd probably have him more, Ian, with knowing the injury risk as well, probably more of a borderline running back 3 this week. I don't have him in the ranks right now because when I hear week to week right away, I'm assuming a guy's not playing, and now he's been limited this week, so I'll have to keep an eye on it. But you mentioned Tank Bigsby. I think the flip side is true. I'm not really moving Bigsby if ETN's playing because of what I just talked about. Tank Bigsby has shown in the 4 healthy games that he's played, he is the guy they want to hand the ball to on early downs. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger. Last week, again, game script went really weird and they got way behind. And so we saw more Dearness Johnson, but it's against the Patriots this weekend. I expect that game at a minimum to be close. Maybe the Jags are leading in the fourth quarter for once. So I think that ETN has a real Bigsby has a real opportunity this weekend, whether ETN is playing or not. I'm not adjusting things. I kind of think at this point, Dearness Johnson is just the sub in for ETN, and I think Tank Bigsby is still going to have his same role. So I would say borderline running back 2. I know you're a little higher. You were in that mid-range running back 2. Maybe ETN being active is enough for you to bump him down maybe to low-end running back 2. I don't know what your thoughts are.
We did just get a report from Brent Martineau because, again, I was wondering for a second, Dwayne. I was like, well, is ETN even going to travel to London? But, yeah, that's right. They stayed there after last week. So, apparently, per, again, Brent, Travis Etienne has not done much all week, although he is continuing to be out there. So, one of these things where you do look at the Jaguars injury report, we kind of saw this with Evan Ingram as well. They do sometimes just list their players as limited because I think they're moving around out there, albeit probably not actually getting ready for the game. So,
on the sideline.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. So Tank Bigsby, my RB16. Dwain is a little bit lower, RB24. I will say, though, versus guys like Bucky Irving versus maybe the Bengals backs, Najee Harris. We going with Tank Bigsby in those situations, Dwain?
Yeah, I have Bigsby slightly ahead. Bucky Irving is really interesting now with the hot hand thing. I think that probably puts Bucky Irving in the driver's seat to start the game. And if he's hot, then he could be staying out there. But the addition of Sean Tucker plus Rachaad White, it makes it too dicey. Yes, I would lean to Bigsby.
Let's stick with that London-themed matchup with Patriots RB Ramondre Stevenson. Has not practiced all week with that foot injury. So I would think we get word, unless the Patriots have already flown out to London, if he's even going to – okay, he did, in fact, make the trip to London, meaning there is a chance that he'll play. We got that update an hour ago. So I guess they're not ruling him out just yet, Dwayne. If we do see Stevenson in the picture, again, going to be tough knowing he's banged up and everything and potentially at risk of limited snaps. If he's out of the picture, yes, Antonio Gibson becomes the RB1, but as we saw last week, behind this offensive line and in this scoring offense, not necessarily the sort of guy that we should be trying to jam in the fantasy lineups anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of matchup on the flip side where I would expect maybe the Patriots can stay close. And that's really what you're looking for with Ramondre. If you can be in that close game script, he has lost more of the passing down work in recent weeks, but still really their leading ball carrier. So if he is healthy and we think he's going to be in a game script that could work out in favor of the Patriots, I think at worst that makes him like that same area we just talked about. Folks are going to get really sick of hearing this, but there's a range of guys that are all just together. I know we want to try to tell you exactly which one to start, but whenever I do office hours on Friday mornings, after this show, and if you guys want to join us in Discord, you can. I answer all the questions there for about 45 minutes. These will be coin flip situations, a lot of these players that we're talking about. But I think you're talking about low-end running back 2. But Mondre does give you that high-end running back 2 upside. We have seen it. I know we've talked about him as a sell high. But the reason why is he's actually had sell high moments. He's actually been able to score fantasy points some games, and that opens a sell high window. So I think this could be one of those types of games. Having the injury, though, coming in, worrying about, a re-aggravation of that's enough to keep me from pushing him any higher than like probably that running back 23, 24, type range.
And we did hear from Jared Mayo that Stevenson will, quote unquote, probably be a game time decision, which is fine for us in fantasy because, again, this is going to be an island game early on in Sunday. So I'm with you, Dwain. Low end RB2. Right now, assuming Stevenson's out, I have Antonio Gibson, RB28. Waz has him RB25. It does feel like a situation where, again, maybe we're dropping Gibson down a few spots lower than Stevenson, but it is one of these where we're almost more or less just kind of crossing out Mondre and putting Gibson in there.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a downgrade just because Antonio Gibson is not as good as Ramondre Stevenson, but a very similar workload. I mean, last week he had 62% of the rushing attempts, played half the snaps, 33% route participation. Those almost exactly match Ramondre Stevenson's percentages from the week before. So I do think they're pretty much plugging as a team Gibson into Mondre's role. Then you've got Jermichael Hasty really picking up some of the passing down work.
Yeah. More running back news. Panthers RB1, hopefully at some point. Jonathon Brooks returned to practice this week. He did not practice on Thursday, but that was indeed a planned rest day off. So still considered week to week by head coach Dave Canales. Dwain, if and when we get Jonathon Brooks back, which I'm not exactly sure when it's going to be, it sounds like they're taking their sweet time. Certainly not a team that is, crushing it in real life and maybe needs to hurry this going on. I mean, how long is it going to take you to force him in the lineup? Because it does seem like Chuba Hubbard has played well enough to the point that I'd almost be surprised if it's not something close to a 50-50 split if and when Brooks is back on the field.
I don't think it'll be 50-50 right away because you're going to have the ramp-up period for Brooks. My guess is that Brooks comes in and takes over. Yeah. Well, I think when Brooks first comes back, my guess is they would hope he could take the Miles Sanders role, which is about 30% of the work. That's probably what you're going to see for a couple of weeks. And then I think they could start to ramp it up, and it's going to come down to how the players are performing. What are they really hoping to accomplish? Do they really want to get a good look at Jonathon Brooks because they're thinking running back potentially in the draft again, and they feel they need to see it? It's really hard for us to predict, but I think the real factor here that we didn't see coming is how well Chuba's played. And so major hat tip to Chuba Hubbard. He's made this really difficult for Jonathon Brooks to capture that value that we hoped he might have by the end of this season. Because if Chuba keeps playing the way he's playing in, why would they force it? And I think at that point, it would be, to your point, the most we would probably expect from Jonathon Brooks would be 50-50. Now, again, it's a long season. Chuba's play could decline. Chuba could get hurt. There's a lot of ways Jonathon Brooks still ends up having a lot of value. I just don't think it's going to be the path we originally thought, which was, okay, A, we thought his timeline would be shorter based on all the reporting that was out there around his injury. And then B, the fact that Chuba, we didn't think was going to be as good as this. And so we thought, hey, man, by week 8 or 9, maybe this guy has 60-70% of the backfield. I don't feel strongly about that. I've got Chuba at running back 9, and if you told me Jonathon Brooks was playing this weekend, I wouldn't even move him because I don't think Jonathon Brooks in his first game back is getting 50% of the work. He's going to get the Miles Sanders role.
And honestly, just in my heart of hearts, I don't think he's going to be back this week by any stretch. Again, just having returned to practice for the first time. And then you start looking at the schedule, Dwain. Again, they're at Washington this week. Then they're against the Broncos, Saints, and Giants. Not really talking about the specific opponents, but after that, they have a bye. I do think there's a chance, man, that they really take it easy and bring them back week 12 or at least ramp them up before the bye and then maybe try to unleash them after. But, man, I go back to that week 3 game. We had Andy Dalton come in for Bryce Young, really ignite the offense, do some good things. And you and me were just excited seeing the role that Chuba had and some of the points he got, thinking that it would translate to Jonathon Brooks. But here we are a month later, and he just keeps on doing really freaking good, Dwain. Only Derrick Henry, I believe, has more PPR points than Chuba since Dalton came under center. This is wild.
Chuba's utilization score over the last 3 games is a 9.
Oh
a 9 is the best you can get is a 10, guys. And if you're a 9, you're typically probably a high end running back 1. We're talking like top 6, like most of the outcomes finish in that range. And that's what he's been. And that's, man, I actually really love week 7 in the rankings and projections process because the way we have everything built in the back end of our tools at FantasyLife, we're leaning into players' past stuff as well, all the way up until week 6. Now, there's certain data points that we know are more sticky over time that we hang on to that old stuff, but a lot of things kind of get the slate gets wiped clean. And Chuba immediately moved way up in the ranks. It was kind of like, okay, this is for real, guys. And we really have seen it for the last 3 to 4 weeks. So Chuba, I mean, man, he scored 22.1, 18.5, and 14.3 fantasy points over the last 3 outings. That's 18.3 per game. You love Chuba Hubbard. We're not talking about him enough as honestly one of the best values in fantasy. This guy was on people's waiver wires quite often in week one. So Chuba is I know there's been a lot of great names to talk about, and we're worried about the return of Jonathon Brooks. Probably why we don't talk about him enough, but he's been really good.
Third in touches again since week 3. Absolute king shit out of Chuba Hubbard. All right, let's talk about another running back, hopefully returning from injury, seemingly doing so, but we'll see what the workload looks like. Browns RB1 Nick Chubb obviously had that devastating knee injury last year, but given the Player Tribune article, given the back-to-back full practices, does seem like he is going to be making his season debut now here ahead of week 7. So, Dwayne, when we do look at Nick Chubb, probably wouldn't make sense if he's getting that full workload in his first game back, but then again, Jerome Ford now practicing with the hamstring injury. Deontay Foreman hasn't done much with his touches. Where are you ranking Nick Chubb this week?
I'm the lowest, and I may need to move him up because, like, and even Wet Blanket Friedman's got him at 28. I have him at 43. Wow. But I'm projecting him for a third of the work no matter what. Like, I don't think it matters if Ford is available or not. I think this will be a medical decision, right? I think it's not going to be like, oh, we get in a game where we got to play Nick Chubb more. I don't think that scenario exists. I think they have a plan for Nick Chubb. They already know what it is. My guess is he's getting a third of the rushing attempts. Again, guys, I'm not a doctor, and I have not gone back and studied all these players returning from these injuries and what they get exactly in the first week. But generally, reading what I see from our true Twitter doctors is it is a ramp-up period, and you might not see but 30, 40% like of their workload in these first few games. So that's kind of what I'm going with here. I probably should move him because right now, like, I've got him behind Emmanuel Wilson. I would start him over Emmanuel Wilson. I've got him behind Charbonnet. I'm starting him over Charbonnet. Where it gets tricky, Ian, is Ray Davis, Tyrone Tracy. Even if their starters are back, like, how much do we think that they've actually carved out a role or not? We don't know. Like, we have no clue. Maybe not. So I think you could find a scenario where you push him ahead of those guys because you're probably locked into at least 30% of the touches. Those guys might get 10% of the touches. Here's the thing I will say. I don't think Ray Davis or Tyrone Tracy is taking over their backfield like some people are telling you. I think at a minimum it's a split. So I think you could find a way to probably get Nick Chubb for me as high as I could definitely put him over Zamir White. And I think, I think it's Rashad White, man. I think it's Rashad White and Raheem Mostert. I think that's the range, which would be like, for me, that's like mid-range to low-end running back 3.
What about Zach Moss?
I would start Zach Moss.
Damn.
I would start Austin Eckler too. I think I would start Austin Eckler too, just because the matchup and you get the Panthers. Yeah. And again, this is me assuming Brian Robinson Jr. is playing now. I think I'm starting Devin Singletary if he plays. I'm starting Mondre over him. So yeah, I think that's the range for me. I think you could get him maybe as high as like a high end running back 3, but I wouldn't be counting on him this week.
Does seem like there should be,
love him.
Browns OC Ken Dorsey on his expected workload, quote, still a work in progress. We want to make sure that he is available in the long term. Doesn't exactly sound like someone ready to give him 25 touches, Dwayne, but like you, I am not a doctor. 49ers running back Jordan Mason still dealing with that shoulder injury, has been limited in both Wednesday and Thursday's practice to start the week. So hopefully we get that full practice on Friday and there's no tag, but knowing how the 49ers work, Dwayne, seems a bit unlikely. So that is going to be the 4:30 kickoff. Great game between the Chiefs and the 49ers in a Super Bowl rematch. Might have to make some tough decisions here, Dwayne. And just, again, haven't run a bunch of studies with it, but historically, I get nervous about these running backs having the shoulder, the rib sort of injuries, because it really is a position where you're taking on so much contact, not the hardest thing to kind of re-aggravate out there. So Jordan Mason, someone who's regularly been near the top of just our even overall flex rankings on a weekly basis. How are you adjusting to this newfound injury?
Yeah, I'm like you. I worry about it. At the same time, we do know there's enough upside with Jordan Mason because we've seen it. I've got him at running back 18. I'm a little ahead of you. You're running back 23. I just think it's the 49ers. We've seen some of the workloads he can handle. The Chiefs are a tough matchup against the run. It kind of looked like they weren't for the first few weeks, but it was mainly because of Lamar Jackson. They've actually been really good against running backs. So whenever you look at Jordan Mason, I could see where you have him, low end running back 2, but I think mid range, like I'm still going to start him over Najee Harris. I'm going to start him over Kareem Hunt. And then we have other guys that have injury issues we don't know about, but I'm playing him over Tank Bigsby. I think he's shown us enough upside that I'm going to do that. But to your point, I'm not moving him up. This is where I'm planning on him playing. This is where I have him. So he's below James Cook, below Achane, below Josh Jacobs. I'm not moving him ahead of all those names just because of worry of the re-injury risk that you mentioned.
If he is out, how are we treating things between Patrick Taylor and Isaac Guerrero?
I think it's pretty tough. I wrote this up in the Risers and Fallers article for the rankings this week, and I talked about this scenario. And really, you had a split. You had a split situation last weekend. You had Patrick Taylor taking on more of the passing down work, Ian, and getting about 30% of the rushing attempts. Isaac Guerrero, was really splitting time with this guy and not playing on passing down. So we know he's got that big play upside. He flashed that in that game with that 70-yard gallop. So there's some potential here for Guerrero. But I'll be honest, it's still really hard to get him higher than maybe low-end running back 3. Just because I do think this is still going to be a split, a shared situation. I don't trust it that Guerrero's just going to come out and take all the work. And again, because you have to start thinking about, am I going to put him above Tank Bigsby? No. I'm not. I think Patrick Taylor's going to play, and he's going to have a role. And then Deebo Samuel's going to get his touches as well. So I don't think Guerrero's stepping into anywhere near the role that Jordan Mason had.
What about Guerrero versus, say, Singletary and Tracy if they're both active?
I would play him over Tracy. I'm going to play Singletary, I think, over. That's close. I would probably play Singletary. But I will say this: if you're looking for pure upside and you're like, I just need a ceiling game, I would take Guerrero in that case, because there's a range of outcomes with all these things. We could be on this show next week, and you're like, "Wow, Dwayne, you look like an idiot. He had 80% of the carries." That scenario can also play out.
It can. I think the moral of the story here, again, like we're having a hard time trying to get him higher than like RB30 or so kind of in our ranks, even if Mason is out. So if Mason is going to be this game time decision that we don't know until 2:30, and you have even a somewhat close start sit decision, go ahead and just start the other guy.
Agree.
Yeah. Yep. All right. One more big RB injury we want to get there. There actually are several more that we will note, but the one we want to talk about, Vikings RB Aaron Jones with that hamstring injury. Was a hip. Now it's to the hamstring. Seeing some of the beat reporters try to like talk us through it, like, well, the hip actually kind of attaches to the hamstring, so we shouldn't be all that concerned. Oh my goodness, what a joke. But anyway. Yeah, right. Started off the week with the DMP. Was limited, though, on Thursday, Dwayne. So maybe he's moving in the right direction. Again, we heard O'Connell say during the bye week it was a week-to-week injury. So tentatively not thinking it's anything too long-term. Then again, they make the trade for Cam Akers. Not exactly looking ideal for Sunday. So again, arguably the game of the week against the Lions in that 1 p.m. time slot. If Aaron Jones is not available, Dwayne, because again, I would say he's trending towards probably not playing in this one. How high are we ranking Ty Chandler?
Yeah, I would be ranking Ty Chandler in the running back 14, 15, 16 range. Like it's a game where we think there's an opportunity for a lot of points. It's a tough Lions defense, but Ty Chandler just showed us last year in a much lesser Vikings offense, Ian, that he can come through for us. So I feel pretty good about him getting 65, 70% of the snaps in this game. Cam Akers just came over from another team. Myles Gaskin is the other name. So anytime you're going to give me a guy that has a shot at 70% of the snaps at the running back position on a really good offense, which is what we think about the Vikings, I want to be in on that scenario. So I think, mid-range running back 2. If Aaron Jones does play, that's my question to you, Ian. Like, how I don't know, man. Like, how cautious are you going to be? Like, I think at that point I'd probably be like running back. I'd put him around Kareem Hunt, which I have at running back 21. I just worry when someone's week to week, and now we have we've got a hip injury and we've got a hamstring injury. I mean, I don't know, man. Aaron Jones has been great this year, but he's also a player that we've seen try to come out and play hurt and leave games.
I think that's about right. I mean, look, we have James Conner, my RB21, your RB22. He's not on the injury report, which is nice. I think I'd start him ahead of Aaron Jones if, we do see Jones playing through a questionable tag or something like that. Similar something with Najee Harris. I think I lean Chase.
Do you? Yeah. I think that's honestly where you get to the coin flip territory. I think I'd play him over Tank Bigsby. But I mean, again, I think you're in coin flip territory, and then Javonte, who already played last night. So, right, I'd start him over Ramondre.
Yeah, I'd do that too. I would take Bigsby. Just think there's better, 20-plus touch upside. But again, we'll see what happens there. Again, we kind of surprised if Jones plays. So Ty Chandler, though, Dwayne, you brought up the point. We did see that one game last year. I know Ty Chandler took over the starting role over the past, 3-4 weeks down the stretch of 2023. But only one of those games was Madison actively sidelined. And in that one, man, 81% snaps, 23 carries, and 4 targets. So that was post Cam Akers' Achilles tear, but they just got him back this week. week. I'd be very surprised if Chandler isn't pushing for that 20 combined carries and targets. Needs to be better than he has this year, under 4 yards per touch. But hey, someone in a great offense against a good Lions run defense. However, wouldn't be surprised at all if they are a bit, shell-shocked again without Aiden Hutchinson here moving forward. Again, guys, those were the main RB injuries, but want to quickly rapid fire through some other notable issues that we need to keep an eye on ahead of Sunday. Firstly, guys that have been practicing in full and should be playing: Dolphins RB Devon Achane with that concussion, Bills running back James Cook with the toe injury. We'll say, though, Dwain, Ray Davis was a midweek Thursday addition with a calf issue, came up as limited, so keep an eye on that. Also, Steelers running back Najee Harris had the rib injury and didn't practice on Wednesday. He was full on Thursday, so seemingly good to go. Our one true king, Cordero Patterson, sadly still not practicing. Also, Chiefs RB Clyde Edwards-Helaire is practicing in full and should be making his season debut after spending time on the non-football injury list with that PTSD stuff. Limited in practice, so we'll see. Joe Mixon with the ankle, although he did play through his questionable tag last week after being limited, so I think that's more maintenance than anything. We'll see with the Commanders running back Brian Robinson. Now, he did not practice all last week and was questionable, didn't play. This week he is limited, but man, Dwain, again, we said this earlier in the week, but if Brian Robinson is out ahead of this matchup against the Panthers, if you want to rank Austin Eckler RB5 overall, man, I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, he would be in my top 10 for sure. Yeah. I mean, we're playing, we've got a game script that could completely go his way. And the beauty of Austin Eckler is whenever he is the guy that's on the field instead of Brian Robinson, if Robinson's out, he's pretty much game script. Like you can't nuke his value because he's going to be on the field for passing downs. But if he's also getting Brian Robinson's work as a runner and getting those carries inside the 5, man, it's one of the best roles you can have in football right now on a hot offense. So yeah, top 10 running back.
Giants running back Devin Singletary limited this week with that groin injury still. Now, he was limited last week as well and wound up not playing through that questionable tag. So maybe Tyron Tracy will get another week as the featured back. I'm with Dwain, though. Even if Singletary is back, I don't exactly see Tracy taking over this backfield. More of a split than we saw before, sure. But again, just keep in mind, Singletary himself was playing some good ball before that injury. With the Buccaneers, yes, dreaded 3-headed hot hand approach. We'll see if Rachaad White is even back to make it that sort of a situation, though. He was limited on Thursday ahead of Monday Night Football. Last week, he started off with a limited practice and then did not practice the rest of the week. So keep an eye on that ahead of Monday night. I will say, though, if it's close, start-sit decisions involving a Buccaneers running back, probably go with the other guy because they do have a tough matchup against that Ravens front 7. And finally, Raiders running back Zamir White also limited in practice throughout this week. He's not someone we want to play anyway, but he would be a, just slight, pain, thorn in the side, if you will, to Alexander Mattison, desperate managers out there. But, you guys probably have bigger problems at that point. And finally, Dwain, we do have some hijinks going on in Indy. Jonathan Taylor still not practicing. The mild high ankle sprain apparently is a bit more severe than what was let on. Just crazy to hear something, coming out of Indy that we didn't know was happening. Wow. Trey Sermon, though, is back practicing in limited fashion on Thursday. So would think it's going to be Sermon and Tyler Goodson again, but maybe this is a sign that Anthony Richardson is allowed to open up the passing game more than usual. So wouldn't count on Jonathan Taylor being out there, nor would I count on Tajay Spears being out there for the Titans. Has not practiced all week with that hamstring injury. Wheels up for Tony Pollard, who has looked good this season with his opportunities. So guys, those were the running back injuries. Now we have plenty of wide receiver goodness to get to, but first, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. A chill in the air, leaves falling to the ground, and football every weekend. That is what fall is all about, and you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. That's $200 in bonus bets instantly, and you can stay in on the action and use your $200 and bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. After all, DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. I know we've had a lot of negative injury news coming through, Dwain, really this whole season, this week, not excluded from that. But hey, actually got a little bit of sliver of sunlight. Cardinals wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. starting off the week with a limited practice, despite still being in the concussion protocol. So not a given, he clears. But again, usually when you see these guys not playing after concussion, they're starting off the week with a DMP. Really, really encouraging to see him get this ahead of that Monday night clash against the Chargers.
Yep, I feel pretty good that Marvin Harrison is going to be out there for us. So I think you're talking about a low-end wide receiver 2 right now. Ian talked about it earlier in the week. Just watching Kyler Murray, he's missing Marvin Harrison Jr. And I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is still getting his targets. Like, he's got a 23% targets per route run on the season. That is pretty good for a rookie. That's one of the better situations for a rookie whenever we look historically. So Marvin Harrison Jr. doing his part, Ian. So I feel pretty good about him. We just need Kyler, man. Kyler, come on. Let's take a step forward. Let's get this offense going. I think that Harrison, Jr., he has wide receiver 1 upside. The offense is the struggle right now.
They flashed. The Rams game was incredible. The second half, or even like the last kind of 20 minutes, that 49ers comeback, that was great. But otherwise, man, like 4 games already this year. 3 of them, they've been under 300 total yards of offense. I think another one, they were at like 303. So when you do look at some of their, EPA numbers and stuff, you see them more middle of the pack. And it's like, oh, this isn't that bad. But again, just been a bit more of a bumpy ride than you would otherwise expect. So Marvin Harrison Jr., tentatively expecting him to be good to go. And it is one of those situations where usually with the concussions, we kind of know, sooner rather than later if they've actually cleared the protocol. I would imagine by Saturday we have a definitive answer one way or another. If Marv is out, though, decent bumps up the rank for guys like Michael Wilson and to a lesser extent, Greg Dortch. Perhaps more troubling, though, Dwain, we do have Panthers wide receiver 1, Deontay Johnson, yet to practice this week with an ankle injury. Now, he's had this issue kind of throughout the year. He's had a hamstring, a groin pop up. It's kind of the Deontay Johnson experience. And Dave Canales has said before that even without him practicing, he will be fine. Haven't heard from Deontay or to my knowledge Canales speaking about this injury just yet. However, Xavier Legette did say that he thinks Deontay will be playing out there for what it's worth. So again, Dwain, with a lot of receivers, if they weren't practicing the first 2 days of the week, I would be more concerned. But with Deontay Johnson, one of those situations where I do think he'll still find a way to get out there.
Yeah, I think today's big, though. Let's see, if we were to hear he didn't practice again today, I would definitely be more concerned and have to move him down the ranks. If he practices today, I'm not moving him. The man has a 9.1 utilization score in his time with Andy Dalton under center. That is absolutely elite. He's averaging 18.3 fantasy points per game, and they play the freaking Commanders, guys. Mike Evans went for 5 and 61 and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin, 8 for 83 and a touchdown. Malik Neighbors, 10 for 127 and a touchdown. Jamar Chase, 6 for 118 and 2 tutties. Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 for 45 and 1. Zay Flowers, 9 catches, 132 yards at halftime. And then they didn't need to throw the ball to him anymore. So Deontay Johnson, if he's practicing today, he's my wide receiver 11. I'm not moving him. If he doesn't practice today, probably have to move him into that wide receiver 3 territory, but you still have to know the boom is there. The bust could be there, but man, the reward, this is one of those situations where a lot of times a situation like that, Ian, you can be like, it's fine, I will just bench the player. But you're like, it's the freaking Commanders, like the worst week of all weeks to have to make that decision to put Deontay Johnson on your bench. That would be very hard for me to do.
I do think it's the dreaded late afternoon kickoff. It is 4:05 p.m. So again, hopefully we do get some words on it. We've seen this earlier this year where he had a situation where, didn't practice to start the week, was limited, didn't even have a questionable tag. That was in week 5. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. You think Deontay Johnson is still on the Panthers this time next week, Dwain?
Man, I don't know. I mean, he's definitely showing that he's got value. Dude, he's just doing what he's always done. It's just he finally found a quarterback he had a connection with Andy Dalton. So I'll be honest, like if I were the Bills, if I were, any of these teams looking, like he would have been at the top of my list. And because Deontay Johnson, he's a younger player. I would want him if I was the Jets as well. So we'll see. We'll see where he potentially ends up. But I'll be honest, I'm loving it right here. The challenge is we could eventually have Bryce Young back under center.
Again, things are going great in Carolina. You heard all the goodness that Dwain just said. I would think the 2 teams at the top of the potential we need a wide receiver ASAP Rocky list could be the Chiefs and Cowboys. And if you put Deontay into those offenses, look, he loses some like top tier volume. I get it. Where is he going to find more than his current situation? But playing with Dak, playing with Mahomes potentially, I don't think he'd be falling that far down the ranks. Very much.
He might have it
weekly. Yeah,
he might get it with Mahomes. Like he could still potentially be a 30% target share guy just because they don't have anyone else. I guess neither really does Dallas. That's the thing. You would have an offense where it's just two guys, but Dallas would at least have a third with Ferguson. I think the Chiefs, it would, with how bad Worthy's been, it might just be Kelsey and Deontay.
Some Packers wide receiver injuries going on. Dontavian Wicks week to week with that shoulder injury. Also have Christian Watson limited with the ankle, but that was the case last week as well. And also Jaden Reed, who injured his ankle during the game in week 6, came back in and played, but he is limited in practice. So again, Dwayne, I would think Wicks is going to be out because when I hear week to week, that's what I hear. Yeah. But then again, seeing some clips from practice, seems like he's in full pads and kind of doing his thing out there. So if we do see Wicks active, look, I don't think we can necessarily trust Wicks, but I think more than anything, it's just a downgrade to the potential upside of Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, if Wicks plays, I don't want to play any of these guys. As much as I love the Packers offense,
other than
over
Reed.
400 yards. Yeah, other than Reed. Duh. Yeah, I'm talking about these guys. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, not playing them. Dontavian Wicks, not playing him. If Wicks is out, I think you're boom bust territory wide receiver 4 for Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. So even then, not guys you're like rushing to get into your lineup. I do think that Christian Watson carries the most upside in. Like if you ask me which one could show up with 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think it's more likely to be Watson, but I would have him and Doubs really close in the ranks.
Breezing through some of the other wide receiver news. Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp still limited with the ankle injury. However, we have received some reports that he should be out there. He's my wide receiver 4 on the week and Dwayne's wide receiver 7. So yes, Cooper Kupp is active, especially with Puka Nacua still sidelined. You need to get him into starting lineups of pretty much all shapes and sizes. Similar sentiment to Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors has cleared the concussion protocol. We are back, baby. Great to see from, one of the most exciting wide receivers in the NFL. Darius Slayton, however, limited with that groin injury, so maybe even more targets on the way for Malik Neighbors. Devontae Adams good to go. Michael Pittman should be good to go. Josh Downs should be good to go. Alec Pierce, though, did suffer a shoulder injury on Thursday and didn't even practice, so we'll see what happens there. Maybe A.D. Mitchell finally gets that full-time role. Players who are limited, Deebo Samuel with a wrist injury, wouldn't think that's going to keep him out of the lineup, but Jauan Jennings not practicing at all with a hip issue. Maybe Ricky Pearsall makes his debut and actually has a starting spot for himself. Also note Chiefs wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, another dreaded midweek addition with a hamstring injury. Certainly something to keep an eye on there ahead of Sunday. Also, Chargers wide receiver Ladd McConkey limited with a hip issue ahead of Monday night. Again, limited should be okay, but certainly a situation to keep an eye on with the matchup, and also Quentin Johnson now practicing with an ankle and DJ Chark potentially returning. Let's see, maybe out. Mike Evans had a hamstring injury that we saw last week. Didn't practice on Thursday to start the week. Has until Monday to get right, but certainly a situation to monitor. And also Raiders wide receiver Jacoby Myers still not practicing with that ankle issue. So Dwayne, those were the big wide receiver injuries. Not a ton going on at tight end. However, we do have former Mr. 170-yard man himself, Dallas Goedert, not practicing with that hamstring issue. Grant Calcaterra, season high 89% route rate in his absence last week, but thought you made a good point on Sunday Night Football. Can't always assume it's going to persist moving forward because now they've had an entire week to kind of figure out what they want to do in the absence of Goddard. And
they'll have another tight end active, so a lot of times when a player goes down, the narrowing and the way Calcaterra gets to that 80-90% range is they only have 2 guys available. And so they'll have 3 available this Sunday if Goddard's out. So I wouldn't expect Calcaterra to continue to do that. And there's just A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are going to gobble everything up, and then Saquon's going to get the rest. So, I don't think there's much you can do with Calcaterra unless you play in a really deep league and it's, tight end premium, that kind of thing. Maybe then you're trying to squeeze him into a lineup. I think the big takeaway here is this is just even more volume for A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith because Goddard's played really well this year. Goddard was fantastic for the Eagles whenever they didn't have A.J. Brown. So you have something that's normally 3, now narrowing down to 2, and an offense that we like. So this does help. A.J. Brown, like we're ranking him in our top wide receiver, top 2 wide receivers no matter what this week. But Devonta Smith, this is a little bit of a bump up the ranks for him.
Eagles don't have a bad matchup in the passing game until December, man. If you guys can find a way to maybe buy low-ish on Devonta Smith, don't hate that, especially, again, with the passing game condensed for the time being. Keep an eye on TJ Hawkinson. He is working his way back from IR with that knee injury. Not someone in the first week back that we want to jam in the lineups, but again, he has been limited, as has Dalton Kincaid. However, one of these weird situations, again, with the collarbone being the limited factor, would think that's kind of a you're in, you're out thing. So the fact he is practicing at all would lead me to believe he should be suiting up. Also, Jaguars tight end Evan Ingram, Packers tight end Tucker Kraft, and Jets tight end Tyler Conklin. All limited, but again, they were limited throughout last week as well and wound up playing, so should be good to go. We'll say, though, Tyler Conklin was one of the Jets with a newfound reduced role, just a 68% route rate again in that first game post Robert Saleh, so not exactly looking like the AFC Kate Otten that we thought we might have had. So Dwain, those were the major injuries. Now it's time to get into some bold predictions that, not to toot our own horns, but we have been doing pretty good this year. What was the record? 15-8 or something like that. We've had a no contest here or there. Last week went, arguably 3 for 3. Terry McLaurin, pair of touchdowns and over 50 receiving yards. Tank Dell, 57 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery, 80 yards and 2 scores. Yeah, I missed on Dontavian Wicks, but he also played 10 snaps and hurt his shoulder. So I'm going to go ahead and cop out and say it wasn't my fault. But Dwain, new week, new us. Go through our bowl calls for week 7, starting with Chargers RB1, J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins is going to be a great running back one this weekend. I'll say 135 yards and 2 touchdowns, Ian. Ooh. So he's sitting at the center of really a perfect storm, right? So last week we saw Dobbins handle 73% of the team's snaps, 68% of the rushing attempts with Gus Edwards moved to IR. Oh, yeah, guys, he was already taking that role over anyway before they moved Gus Edwards to IR. The Chargers are the 7th most run-heavy team in the league with a minus 4.1 drop-back rate over expectation. And really, guys, when you look at it, it's even more impressive than that because it's really the most run-heavy team besides the 49ers of all the teams that don't have a quarterback that runs the ball. So like you got teams like the Eagles with Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson when he's on the field. And then that really skews things a little bit for some of these teams because they want to run a little bit more. They want to get those guys involved in the design run game. So this is a very run heavy team. And then the other thing we've got here, Ian, is the matchup. The Cardinals, they allow the 4th most rushing yards per game at 153. This is going to be one of those games where it should be close enough that there's no way you can get the ball out of Dobbins' hands. Kamani Vidal looked really good last week out of the backfield. I think he's going to steal some of those passing down reps, and he might even grow his role a little bit this weekend, but it's not enough to worry me at all about J.K. Dobbins. I've got him as a top 6 running back this weekend in an absolute smash spot.
Make sure you guys do have Kamani as the handcuff, if you can scoop him off that waiver wire. But yeah, should be many big weeks to come for J.K. Dobbins. I'm going a little chalky with this first one. I'll go surprising with the second one. Don't worry, guys. But give me Malik Neighbors as the overall wide receiver 1 this week, $150 and 2 touchdowns against an Eagles defense that honestly we weren't already scared of, but they are now, guys, really starting to get banged up. Jalen Carter got added to the injury report on Thursday, DMP, and also Darius Slay downgraded from an LP to a did not practice as well. So we know Malik Neighbors has been getting force-fed the football. Now he's had to sit back for 2 weeks and watch Giants fans criticize him about Travis Scott concerts and not wearing Giants gear on the sideline. I think it'll be a great y'all must have forgot performance from a guy who is averaging more receiving yards per game than any Giants receiver we have seen since Odell Beckham Jr. himself. So Malik Neighbors going the hell off this week, Dwain. You want to stick with another talented wide receiver who I know we've been saying good things about. Really nice upcoming stretch for Jordan Addison.
Yeah, so when I wrote this article earlier in the week, and I had this as our sicko start at wide receiver, it is Jordan Addison. He was only in 31% of starting lineups. You guys have gotten around to getting him in there a little more, but at 40%. He's in 40% of starting lineups right now, and he's still available, Ian, in 20% of fantasy leagues. Yes, more. Guys, you got to get him in your lineups. Sam Darnold loves targeting this guy deep. He's got a 17.9 average depth of target. You go watch Jordan Addison on film, man, the double moves are absolutely freaking beautiful. Actually, I think this guy, my favorite comp to him is Deontay Johnson. Now, he's better deep than Deontay Johnson, but I comp him to Deontay because he's a smaller wide receiver that really wins via separation and setting everything up. Real quick twitch kind of guy, like he can flip those hips super fast. Listen to me using like football. Flip the hips, Ian. Yeah, so whenever you look at this, and you got Detroit. You're playing against the Lions. You're going to have to score a lot of points. They've empowered the 4th largest fantasy boost to opposing wide receiver rooms at 4.2 additional fantasy points per game in PPR. So just a great matchup. I think there's a couple of deep balls here. I'm going to say that with Mr. Jordan Addison, we have I want to say mid-range wide receiver 2 performance, Ian, is where I'm putting it. But no, I can't do that. Ian won't let me. I have to actually say it's bold. I have to go with 120 yards and a touchdown, which is going to make him a top 8 play on the week.
Maybe another top 8 play. Noah Brown from the Commanders. That's right, Dwain. I'm going there. 6 catches, 80 yards, not 1, but 2 touchdowns for the number 2 target in Washington right now. We all love Terry McLaurin. He should get his, but with how well Jaden Daniels is playing, it seems like a matter of when, not if, we see again a second high-end pass catcher emerge from the offense. Noah Brown leads the NFL in defensive pass interference penalties drawn this year. Really has been getting some fantasy-friendly downfield looks, and as things stand right now, with that 63% route rate, he is the second most utilized Washington receiver. So maybe a 3-time multiplier here for the bull call because we are going out under reach. No, guys, like don't put Noah Brown in ahead of guys like Jordan Addison or ahead of, some of these ballers at the top of the ranks. They are ranked where they are for a reason. But again, the good matchup, the offense, and some of those downfield opportunities, especially, if you're in some of those parlay degen streets or trying to build a DFS lineup, I do think Noah Brown could surprise. So hopefully we keep these bull calls rolling, Dwain. Been feeling good about him so far. What could go wrong in this lovely sport? So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show, everybody. Hope you enjoyed as always, and hope you just generally have a freaking great weekend. A lot of good football ahead of us. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show, and until next time, take care, everybody.